You're listening to The New Yorker Out Loud. I'm Blake Eskin, editor of Newyorker.com. This week, soccer in Istanbul.
A lot of their chants are like, Beşiktaş, I came out to die with you today, my beloved.
In the March 7th issue of The New Yorker, Elif Batuman writes about Istanbul's most passionate soccer fans. Also in the issue, James Serwicki considers economic development in the Middle East, fiction by David Foster Wallace, and Ben Greenman listens to Randy Newman.
He's 110, maybe 5'5". She don't eat meat, but she eat you alive. She's only a girl, but she's big time.
The sound you're hearing is from a game between Liverpool and Beşiktaş, one of the three big soccer teams from Istanbul. At another match against Liverpool, Beşiktaş fans broke a world record when their cheering hit 132 decibels. Beşiktaş fans are known for their volume, but also for their creativity with profanity. Elif Batuman has been hanging out with some of the team's most ardent supporters, and she joins me by phone from Istanbul to tell us about it. Hi, Elif.
Hello.
So, Elif, you've been going to some Turkish soccer games. Give us a sense of what it's like sitting there in the stands.
Well, first of all, at Beşiktaş, you don't sit, you stand. The stadium seats about 38,000 people, but they tend to oversell tickets, so it was extremely crowded. I'd never been to a live soccer game anywhere, including in Turkey. And the first day I went, it was a cold, windy, wet day with this gusting wind, and I just felt like I was being assaulted by the weather amid a sea of men. People were getting kind of angry and agitated, and I later found out that some people had been stabbed at that game, although I didn't see anything. But at some point, I had a hood on, and this guy kind of pushed me out of the line, and I ended up in a sort of a mud puddle, and then my hood came off in the wind, and then he's like, stop everything, everyone, there's a lady here, everyone let the lady through. And then they were very gentlemanly, everyone let me through. So that was what it was like at Beşiktaş. At Fenerbahçe, I went there with my cousin, and where we sat, there was a roof, and there were seats with armrests, and there was a heat lamp, and it was like being on a completely different planet.
So, Elif, you come from a Turkish family, although you grew up in the States. How much were you aware of Turkish soccer growing up? Were you a big fan?
No, I wasn't, although it's an interesting thing. While I was reporting the story, something that kind of came to light that I had no idea about was that every single person in my extended family, none of whom comes from Istanbul and almost none of whom have spent any time in Istanbul, they all support one of the three Istanbul soccer teams. It's incredible. And I don't even know what they mean by support, because my grandparents, I never even saw them mention soccer or look at the score in the paper or turn on the TV team. But then suddenly everyone was like, oh, yeah, of course, these grandparents, the Adana side of the family, they're like these working class Marxists, so they support Beşiktaş. And, but on my mother's side, my mother's mother supported, I think, Fenerbahçe, and her father supported Galatasaray. So there's all these family loyalties, and, different cousins have sort of defected to different teams, and there's just this whole story there that I had no idea about.
So back to the Beşiktaş fans you were hanging out with. I always think about soccer hooligans drinking, but I never think about them drinking tea.
Yeah, when I was with the hooligans, the so-called hooligans, they were drinking tea the whole time. And to be polite, one of the politeness things is that you offer everyone more tea than they can possibly drink, and then you also drink more tea than you can possibly drink to keep up. So I think I drank like 11 little cups of tea and was up all night. Then I was worried because it was not very high quality tea. It was really bitter. So I wanted a lot of sugar, but for some reason, as a woman, I'm exempt from a lot of the kind of macho considerations that I think a male reporter might have to worry about. But I had this weird flash of like, I don't want to use too much sugar in my tea in front of the hooligans. Like, I'm embarrassed. Like, they're going to laugh at me for taking too much sugar. And I said, 2 lumps. And then the guy next to me was like, oh, I want 4. And I was like, oh, well, if you're having 4, I want 4 too. And then the head guy who I had come to interview was like, 4 is nothing. I take 7.
So other than, I guess, how many lumps of sugar you take with your tea, how is this kind of an expression of sort of Turkish masculine identity? What insight did you get into Turkish men, or what ideas were either reinforced or challenged by the way you saw these soccer fans in action?
the single most fascinating thing to me was the rhetoric of love, and specifically this mad, unrequited, desperate love, the kind of love that you die for. And these kind of macho guys, a lot of their chants are like, Beşiktaş, I came out to die with you today, my beloved. Or I remember the first time that I saw you, it was a rainy day, you were wearing striped uniforms. And they have these, real love songs.
Şampiyon olacağız Beşiktaş'ın bu sene, koyacağız cimbomoma penere.
Are you reading this in the tradition of love poetry in the Muslim world or something? Is that what it sounded like to you, or?
Definitely a lot of the rhetoric was the same, and a lot of their just general discourse takes place in poetry, which is very strange. One of their amigo, who's someone, he leads the fans in their often obscene chants at the games, and he wrote a book about Ricardo Quaresma, who's a recent foreign recruit for Beşiktaş. And I was reading his book, and it's full of these allusions to these kind of obscure 19th century, 20th century Turkish poets, and it's kind of written. It looks like you're reading something by Mayakovsky. if you go on their web forum, it's full of poems that people have written about just all kinds of aspects of Beşiktaş. I went to watch a game with some kind of college-age guys in a bar in Beşiktaş, and I was asking them about this love aspect, and they were like, yeah, no, it's exactly the same thing. I always have the mark of Beşiktaş on my body somewhere. And then they all started producing all the stuff that they carry, the Beşiktaş cigarette lighter. They all have Beşiktaş ringtones on their phone. They're always wearing something that is touching their skin that has, the shirt or a scarf or whatever. Then I asked at some point, where do women actually fit in with this? And then everyone has a story about how they broke up with a girlfriend over Beşiktaş, or they're not planning to get married because they're already married to Beşiktaş.
Is the team a she in the poems, or is it just the beloved?
There's no gender in Turkish, but they're all she's because they're either beloved or they're getting violated in some extremely graphic way if it's the rival team. Yeah,
that brings us to, and we're about to listen to a chant, I believe, called the Fener Opera.
Oh, yeah.
So what is that about?
Well, the words, so it's to the tune of Those Were the Days. The words are, we're all Beşiktaş fans, we're all against violence, football is friendship, football is brothership. So it's about there should be an end to swearing in football. And then the chorus is, but one last time, suck my cock, Fener. And Fenerbahçe is Beşiktaş's main rival. They hate them. They say really funny things about them. Their main complaint about Fenerbahçe is all they care about is winning. Like, which is really kind of hilarious if you think about it. They're like, if their team doesn't win, then they stop going to games, and all they care about is success. And we're not like that. Like, we have a soul. But so they have this song, which then it. If you look on YouTube or Google videos and you look at opera to Fener, you can find just this incredible proliferation. There are, Japanese and Korean girls in karaoke bars in Japan and Korea are singing it. There's these guys in a parking lot in Africa. There's some Turkish people in the Vatican singing the song. And I don't know, half of them are Turkish people, but half of them are foreigners who they've made to say, suck my cock, Fener. A lot of the time women, it's extremely puzzling. There's one where it's a Israeli paratrooper. It looks like this teenage kid, like doing his military service. He's jumping out of an airplane. And he's recording himself on his cell phone as he sings this. And why? There's no one with him. He's just falling through. Yeah, it's a complete mystery to me.
So, Elif, we haven't talked at all about what's happening on the field. What's the relationship like between the fans and the players?
The strangest moment at one of the games that I went to was the fans, they do this cheer at the beginning of the match where they actually call out the players. It's like a cheer involving the names of one of the players. They sing this during the warm-up. And when they sing the player's name, the player has to kind of like jog out to the stands and wave at them and then jog back. And if they don't, the fans get super angry and the players... I don't know, they're kind of humoring them, and they're kind of, they kind of want to be nice to the fans, but it's also kind of like, if 30,000 people are yelling at you, like, come over here, you kind of have to go over there. It's this really interesting power. And it was kind of the one moment where, because otherwise you have this whole really rich fan culture, and then you have this, what looks like a completely other thing from another planet, which is a soccer game that's taking place on the field. And the idea that what the players do corresponds in any way to what the fans do, it's really hard to wrap your mind around. And then there's just this kind of like vertiginous moment where the players have to acknowledge the fans, and you can feel this power dynamic. There was something very, very moving about it, and kind of scary also.
So Besiktas is a soccer team. It's a neighborhood. Is this an identification with a team, with a neighborhood, with a class? What exactly is being a Besiktas fan?
According to one of the studies that I read, like 75% of all Turkish people support a football team. And within that, what it means to support Besiktas, it's more, it's the underdog team. The kind of famous people are usually support Fenerbahce. Orhan Pamuk is a Fenerbahce fan. The Turkish president is a Fenerbahce fan. The famous people who support Besiktas are more kind of like these sort of artsy Marxist working class types. I had this great interview with Zeki Demirkubuz, who's a Marxist filmmaker, and he does these kind of Dostoevsky-inspired movies. He's just doing an adaptation of Notes from the Underground, and he described it as kind of the Dostoevskian team that, as Dostoevsky shows that, if 2 + 2 always equals 4, there's no point in being alive. 2 + 2 has to sometimes equal 5. So he describes Besiktas as, they're probably going to lose. They're going to fuck something up, but you have to be their fan anyway, because otherwise you're caving into rationality. And Besiktas is the most human team.
The other thing I wondered is when you cover something where people are this passionate about something, is there anything you are this passionate about or could ever imagine being this passionate about?
There's definitely no group that I align myself with as passionately as the Besiktas group aligns themselves. Probably my work is and the world of letters and literature is as important to me as Besiktas is to them. But it's a completely different thing, because even though it's a kind of shared thing, like, literature, it's not just one person, it's everyone. And yet everyone's involvement in it is so kind of individual and individualistic. It's funny because there's a Turkish poet who wrote a poem about the different teams, Cemal Süreya, and he says that he's a Fenerbahce fan, and he says somewhere that Fenerbahce is the team of individualism. But anyway, I think if I lived in Turkey as myself, I would, like my cousin, probably be, and like Orhan Pamuk, would be a Fenerbahce fan, because individual achievement is kind of the paradigm that I've grown up with and that characterizes high achievers. But there's something incredibly appealing as a sort of alternate life about Besiktas. I like to imagine a world in which I was a Besiktas supporter and the life that I would have then.
Well, Elif, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was really fun.
You can read Elif Batuman's article on Besiktas and Turkish soccer in the March 7th issue of The New Yorker. It's also available on our new iPad edition, which you can find in the App Store. Subscribers can also find it on our website, newyorker.com. You can subscribe to this and other free New Yorker podcasts in the iTunes Store or through the BlackBerry Podcast Store. If you're already a subscriber, leave a review, spread the word, become a fan on Facebook. The weekly audio edition of The New Yorker is available from iTunes or at audible.com. The New Yorker Out Loud podcast is produced by newyorker.com and Curtis Fox Productions. For The New Yorker, this is Blake Eskin.